Welcome to another edition of the DLF Dynasty podcast. I'm Dan Myler. With me, Ryan McDowell and Matt Price. Fellas, we're in the last leg of our long, treacherous journey through the rookie cash, stash, and trash series that we do every year. This week's it's the AFC and NFC West. So a few good names to talk about. Before we get to those guys, though, let's talk to Matt Price. Matt, how you doing, bud?
Doing well, Dano. Excited to talk more rookies with you guys. Yeah,
every year we go through this thing, and I don't think we're uncovering anything crazy. And sometimes I fear that we all just kind of stay the line a little bit. It's easy to call a guy, oh, he's a stash. We'll just call him a stash. Until last week at the end, Ryan, when Amon-Ra St. Brown, he was trash. I made him trash. Send him to the garbage heap.
Everybody's wrong every now and then, Dan.
Ryan, how's it going?
It's going well. I thought last week was good too, even though you had that bad call about Steve Brown. We had some good discussion. I kind of felt like I didn't realize how high I was or how interested I was in Kylan Hill. So
sure.
He's a player I've paid a little more attention to this week as I look back on the leagues that have already drafted, get ready for a couple others to draft soon. So, yeah, Kylan Hill is a guy to look for, I think.
Yeah, maybe we'll try to uncover some of those guys this week, and we'll start in the AFC West. We might as well start with the Super Bowl runner-up, I guess. It's the Kansas City Chiefs. They waited till day 3 to jump into the skill position players, but they grabbed a tight end, a depth guy, Noah Gray out of Duke, and then wide receiver Cornell Powell, who's been getting some buzz, I guess, Matt, in rookie camp and then now in mandatory mini camp as a guy that's kind of flashed a little bit. So when it comes to these two Kansas City Chiefs, outside of those top couple skill players in that offense, there's room for another name or two to be contributors, maybe even early. Is there any chance for these two rookies?
I think Powell is a stash. There's not. I mean, is Mecole Hardman going to happen? I mean, if it doesn't happen this year, it's probably not going to happen, right? And after that, there's nothing really exciting on that depth chart, and they like Powell. I'm happy to take him with I haven't looked at recent ADP. I assume he's not even going into the third round at this point. But if I can get him for $1 in an auction, which I did at a couple of places over the last few weeks, I'm happy to do that and see what happens. Anybody attached to that offense obviously has some amount of value, unless your name is Noah Gray, I guess, because you have the best tight end in the league in front of you, right? And I don't think Travis Kelce is going really anywhere for 2 to 3 years at least. So, barring injury or if they all of a sudden want to run 12 personnel more frequently, I don't know. I know you like Gray, Dan, but I'm going to call him a trash kind of roster clogger guy, and I'll stick with stash for Powell.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with calling him trash because at the very least, it is a long-term stash because there's not much room. So he'd have to flash and then flash again and then flash again and then probably still need an injury to Travis Kelce to make any kind of early impact. I don't expect any of that to happen. It is interesting, though. Gray was a mid-fifth round pick, whereas Cornell Powell was a late fifth round pick. So they preferred Gray to Powell. Behind Travis Kelce, there's not a lot of depth there, so I could see them needing another guy, another body. Powell, though, Ryan, I mentioned the flashes and the beat writers kind of talking about him throughout these camps this summer already. He's an interesting name to be monitoring at the very least.
Yeah, I think with this offense, we talk about targeting specific offenses, and obviously the Chiefs would be at the top of any kind of list like that. So I think based on the team and landing spot alone, both of these guys are stashes. I do agree Gray is more of a deeper stash, not only because of Kelce, but also just because of the tight end position. It's so much more, so much harder to hit at that position. But there's been some rookie camp buzz about Gray as well, and some talk that they are going to run more 12 personnel. So have to kind of be careful with that June talk, putting too much stock into that. But I think both of these guys are stashes. And Powell is, for me, kind of what Matt said, more because of the depth chart. Obviously lost Sammy Watkins, and Hardman continues to, I guess, not really take advantage of his opportunity. So if it could be Powell moving up that depth chart quickly.
Yeah, all the news out of Kansas City makes you look at that depth chart and suddenly see that wide receiver core is not stacked with a whole lot of talent. It's really weird to talk about Sammy Watkins as a big loss, because us in the Dynasty community have been so disappointed. But really, he was a big part of that offense when he was on the field. He was needed, really. So somebody will have a chance to step into those shoes. Not sure who that's going to be. You mentioned Hardman, Matt, and he's a different kind of player. He's not a big-bodied guy, not a guy that is going to run across the middle and make catches in traffic. Maybe Cornell Powell could be that type of player and be another outside threat for them. So I called both stashes as well. They're both players that in deeper leagues that I want. And like you, Matt, I've been grabbing Powell in my auctions for $1 late in the auction. Let's move on to the Los Angeles Chargers. They had a couple of third-round picks that we'll kind of lump together here. Wide receiver Josh Palmer, who is a size speed guy and didn't really put up big numbers at Tennessee, but certainly there are reasons to be excited about his upside. And then Trey McKitty, the tight end out of Georgia. So, Matt, what are your thoughts on these guys? Is there much upside when it comes to rostering these guys with a back of the roster spot?
I kind of think they're all stashes. Palmer, Mike Williams presumably is going to be gone next year. Similar size speed combination as Mike Williams there. So, if he does move on, maybe Palmer goes into that role. Not that Williams has been, lights out or anything, but I do think he'll be good this year. Hopefully, if he can stay on the field, right? That's always the issue with him. So Palmer is fun in that regard, and of course attached to a great young quarterback. McKitty, there's nobody there except for Cook, right? So I mean, Parham was a darling for a little while, and kind of got deflated once they added Jared Cook. So as a developmental guy, he's kind of athletic, he can catch the ball well. I've seen a couple of plays of him where he rips down the seam and looks like pretty fluid pass catcher. So maybe there's something there. They did spend a top 3-round pick on him, right? So and then Rountree, kind of a similar situation with how we just talked about Cornell Powell and like just the depth chart. It's Austin Eckler, obviously, and then we have Joshua Kelly, who disappointed. Jackson, who is kind of always hurt, right? If he does get on the field, so there could be some opportunity for Rountree. A little bit of a bigger back offers something different than everyone on the roster, I guess I would say, except for Joshua Kelly, right? So if Kelly continues to disappoint again this season, then maybe Rountree takes that role, whatever that will be worth in this offense. So I'm going to go stash on all three of these players, McKitty and Rountree, probably a little bit longer term unless something happens to Austin Eckler. But Palmer, could make some noise in year 2 pretty easily, I think.
Ryan, these guys are really not showing up as big targets in dynasty leagues and in rookie drafts that you look at on MFL or anywhere else for that matter. But there is a little bit of intrigue, especially with Palmer and maybe even McKitty, and as Matt said, possibly even Rountree, who went in the 6th round out of Missouri.
Yeah, I'm surprised Palmer hasn't been a higher draft pick in rookie drafts. His ADP is 32 overall. That's in Superflex rookie drafts held on my fantasy league. To me, he's more of that late 2nd round range. So not too far off, I guess, but still a player I think overall we're too low on. The draft capital as a mid 3rd rounder is there. Matt talked about Mike Williams potentially moving on after this season, but Williams, we know, unfortunately, has trouble even staying on the field. So, I mean, Palmer could get a chance to really contribute this season, not to mention Hunter Henry's gone. I don't think Jared Cook sees the same type of volume that Hunter Henry had, so potentially even more targets to kind of go around there. I like Palmer as a stash, but I was close to calling him a cash play based on that ADP value. Agree on McKitty, definitely a stash for him as well. And for Rountree, I think it comes down to, do you think he's better than than Joshua Kelly. I'm not quite ready to give up completely on Kelly yet. So I would put Rountree in that trash category.
I would stick with stash on Rountree as well, because while Kelly had his moments, especially early, probably in the first month of the 2020 season, he really wore down. And by the end of the year, he was having a hard time averaging 3 yards a carry. So I think we've seen what he has to offer for us as dynasty managers. It's a little bit of investing in the unknown when it comes to Larry Rountree. I think if he can grab hold of that job, like Matt said, he offers something that the guys that are going to be on the field aren't going to offer.
I think Kelly had an opportunity to play himself into like a 1A, maybe the 1B to Austin Eckler, right? And he just didn't really capitalize on it. Yeah, he failed. I mean, he had like that one good game and then he fumbled away the job basically, right? And maybe that's just the jitters of being a rookie. Maybe he does have something we haven't seen. But I think just based on what you said, Dan, Rountree is a stash.
So Palmer and Cornell Powell and Trey McKitty and even Rountree, they're all like available in the late third and sometimes even in the late four. Is there a guy specifically out of this group, since they're so close in ADP, Cornell Powell with the Chiefs and then Palmer and McKitty with the Chargers, who would you take out of that group, Matt?
I think I would go with, man, that's really tough. I think I would go with Palmer slightly over Powell, mostly because of draft capital, but it's really close between those two. I think, you'd rather have Powell because of the offense he's in, but I think Palmer gets the slight edge.
Sure. Ryan, any thoughts on that?
I think it's Palmer pretty easily.
Okay. Yeah, I was kind of leaning that way as well, despite that recent news of Powell kind of shaking things up at camp. Let's go on to the Denver Broncos. This is one of the biggest names we're going to talk about. It's Javonte Williams, the running back out of North Carolina, Ryan, and he finds himself in a real nice spot with a pretty good offensive line and lots of weapons in place. Sure, there's the veteran presence of Melvin Gordon, but everything coming out of Denver right now says it's going to be more Javonte Williams and less of Melvin Gordon. So you've been on record saying you wouldn't be shocked if Gordon wasn't on this roster when the season kicks off. So there's very little keeping anybody from calling Javonte Williams cash at this point.
Yeah, definitely think he's a cash play. I've thrown that out on a couple of pods and looked at the numbers since then. I don't think it really makes financial sense. They're not going to save too much money by dumping Gordon, so that prediction probably will not be coming true. But I do still think Williams could certainly lead the team in rushing and ultimately be that 1A running back for the Broncos as early as this year. So definitely a cash play for Javonte Williams. And you're getting a little bit of a discount from him from that top tier players, those quarterbacks that we're all chasing and the first two running backs along with Jamar Chase, Kyle Pitts. It almost feels like sometimes you're getting stuck with Javonte Williams. And if that's the case, I think you're ultimately going to be pretty happy.
Yeah, it really feels that way. And I mentioned that offensive line. That's a group that's improving on top of being pretty strong already. And while there's a lot of negativity surrounding the Denver Broncos, specifically the quarterback position, it seems like, Matt, that the Javonte Williams could be a guy that, although it may take a week or two or a month or maybe even two to really get set his feet in the NFL, he's going to be a big-time playmaker for that Denver offense.
Yeah, I don't know what Gordon can offer that Williams can't at this point. Maybe you can make a slight argument that he's Gordon is a better pass catcher at this point in his career. We did see Williams used in that role at North Carolina, but wasn't really featured in that. I think he is more of a dump off option than kind of a weapon downfield, but Gordon isn't necessarily that either. So that's the really only thing you could see Gordon offering at this point. So Javonte Williams is definitely cash. And in auctions too, and in rookie auctions, I've been seeing him going as like a deals, honestly, like a third of the cost of ETN and Harris. And I'm not sure he's, that like if ETN's $300 and Najee Harris is 350 and you get Williams for between 100 and 150, like that seems like a smash for me. I would rather kind of take that value and be able to use my funds elsewhere if that's the case in your auction.
Yeah, and he really fits into that group of receivers, especially in Superflex leagues, where we typically talk about those top 7 names, the quarterbacks, the couple running backs, and probably Chase. And then there's those 2 Alabama receivers and Javonte, and it's starting to feel to me, Ryan, like Javonte's rising to the top of that tier of players, and he might be getting closer to that top 7 than he is to that next tier down.
Yeah, he's definitely an interesting player in rookie drafts and rookie auctions as well. I think in one quarterback drafts, to me, he's basically in a tier by himself because I would never take him over the other 2 backs. I wouldn't take him over Chase. I would not take him over Kyle Pitts.
But after that,
he's clearly the pick, in my opinion. Dan, I know you're a big Waddle fan, but I wouldn't consider Waddle, Smith, Bateman, any of the quarterbacks, basically anybody else. So in single quarterback leagues, I think Williams is in a tier of his own. In Superflex leagues, I can see it being a debate between he and those, second tier quarterbacks, Wilson and Mac Jones.
Yeah, and that's what I was getting to, that group of wide receivers after you get through Chase and before you get to the next running back, whoever you prefer at running back 4, there's a big tier break and there's a big difference there. So Javonte is separating himself, and it certainly seems like he's becoming a value in both auctions and drafts. The Broncos weren't done at the skill positions. In the 6th round, they went with Seth Williams out of Auburn. Ryan, is there, you're a Devy guy. You've been following his career for a long time. He was a big name in the Devy community a few years ago, and it just never really developed. It never really came to fruition. He falls to the 6th round, goes to Denver, where they're loaded at wide receiver. What are you thinking? Are those of us that have him on our taxi squad, took him in a Devy draft or auction, are we just wasting a roster spot at this point?
Yeah, probably so. Unfortunately, I know we've disagreed on Seth Williams over the past few months, Dan. He's been a guy that I've said would be a good late round target. That was the case, at least pre-draft, as we saw his value dropping. But landing in Denver, like you said, to me, the upside I saw with Williams is that he could be that end zone target, the red zone target. But with Cortland Sutton there, with Noah Fant there, and now with 2 pretty talented running backs, Seth Williams is going to be far down that pecking order. And that offense outside of Melvin Gordon is super young as well. So it's not like we can say, let's wait 1 or 2 years and Williams will clearly get his shot. I think all of that goes to putting him in the trash pile, unfortunately. Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. It feels to me like it's a big hill, maybe even a mountain to get onto this roster. The practice squad is probably the best path for Seth Williams, and maybe that gets him to a different team as a wide receiver 5, so he's active on game day and can make a splash somewhere. I'm just doubting it. Matt, what are your thoughts on Williams coming out of Auburn?
Yeah, I'm just not a fan. I don't think he necessarily uses his size well. He can't really create separation with his routes, so I don't know what he really offers an NFL team except for his size. And the only argument I could make for putting him in the stash category, which I'm not going to do, I think he's definitely in the trash category, but Cortland Sutton, unrestricted free agent next season. If they don't sign him, maybe he fills in as that bigger body receiver and kind of takes that role if he, can show himself. So he definitely has the competitive streak, right? We saw him get, I think, a couple of fights, more than one fight, maybe. I think he took a swing at at a player in one of the games that I watched early on in the process. So he has that kind of fire, I guess. So if maybe he's going to play with a chip on his shoulder and is going to, we see those guys succeed sometimes despite their lack of athleticism. So if Cortland Sutton moves on and they like him, what he does his rookie season, maybe we're talking about him in some regard next season in 2022, but I don't think so. I'm going to keep him in the trash category.
Fellas, I'd love to have a conversation about the Las Vegas Raiders and what they did in the draft, but they didn't add anything for us to talk about. So I guess we just have to bypass them. Sorry, Raiders fans.
Hey, when you're stacked on offense like they are, you don't need anything.
Maybe we should just regurgitate last year's rookie class, because I think Henry Ruggs could use a reset, right? Are we still in the stash category on him? Because it certainly isn't cash at this point.
I'm sure we were probably cash on Ruggs and Edwards based on opportunity, and that didn't really play out very well.
Yeah, it didn't work out for any of us, although more opportunities do present themselves this year for those two receivers. Let's head over to the NFC West, guys, and digging through the names, there are a couple big ones. Let's save those for the end. We'll start in Seattle because it was an odd draft day, opening couple days of the draft for the Seattle Seahawks, at least in my opinion. As I'm watching them make their selections, they had a lot of needs. And in the second round, they go with a wide receiver, Dwayne Eskridge, out of Western Michigan. And it just seems like an odd fit to me. It doesn't point to dynasty relevance really quickly. I think Eskridge is an interesting player. I don't know if I love this landing spot, so I'm interested to see if you think he's cash, a stash, or is he trash?
I think he's borderline cash.
Wow, whoa,
I think he's borderline cash. And there's the reason for that. Reason for that is, first of all, I think it is a little bit of a weird pick. He's redundant, I think, with Tyler Lockett a little bit.
He's hurt already.
He's hurt already. That's also a thing. But Russell Wilson, I think, wanted him. He kind of got his way after all those trade rumors. They shored up the offensive line a little bit. They brought in a new play caller to kind of help Russell Wilson out a little bit. So he kind of got his way. And then the other part of this is that the Seahawks kind of wanted to jump in front of the Rams, is the rumors we got, I think, on draft day, and kind of forced a bad pick from the Rams, who we'll talk about next. So I don't know. I think there's a chance he can get on the field if they decide to run some 3 wide receiver sets. He's probably more in the stash category, but I think there's definitely a case where he could be cash.
Okay, Ryan.
Wow, I didn't think it was that hot. I guess so.
It's pretty hot. It's getting steamy.
I said
over
borderline. I didn't say he was like, slam dunk cash.
I thought you were going to say borderline trash, which is basically where I'm at with him.
All right.
Yeah, I think he's pretty close to slam dunk trash.
Wow. Okay.
In my opinion,
I'm happy to be wrong on this one. I don't have any.
No, I like what you said. A lot of what you said was the reason that I think he's trash, though, Matt. He is redundant. Ryan mentioned he's already injured. He comes from the smaller school, and the way the Seahawks run this offense with the run first and all those things that I think you were talking about, it just doesn't feel like there's a path to him being anything more than that roster clogger with maybe a little bit of upside down the road that you just can never really dump, but certainly can't put in your lineup, at least without an injury to one of those top 2 guys.
What if he's Doug Baldwin?
He's 34 years old.
So was Doug Baldwin when he came out, wasn't he?
Ryan, where do you land on him? I actually put trash for Eskridge. So are you going to make it 3 different different answers here?
Yeah, I had him as a stash, and it's just deferring to the draft capital, which I hate to do. But what I like about Eskridge, value-wise, I guess, is that his ADP didn't go crazy based on that draft capital. I think dynasty managers kind of have it figured out, at least a little bit, or we think we do at this point. His ADP is 30 overall. Right now. So mid third round range. I think that's where I would take him. We talked about Josh Palmer earlier, 32 overall. I'd rather have Palmer than Eskridge pretty easily.
Yeah, I would as well. I was going through my notes from scouting, and the top thing I wrote about Dwayne Eskridge was landing spot and draft capital matter. And I think the landing spot is awful. I do not like him in Seattle. And the draft capital is excellent. But I really do think that landing spot, to your point, that you said you're kind of deferring to that, to the capital that being picked in the second round. Those guys typically have opportunities to become big time playmakers, or at least a big part of an offense. And I just don't see it working. And, I watched a lot of Dwayne Eskridge. I tried to get on board with him. I like the long speed, and he can be like that bubble screen and end around type player as well. So there are roles for him to play in an offense. I just don't know if it's going to come fast enough, and if he's going to make a big enough impact for him to be dynasty relevant.
It does make.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Sorry, Matt. It does make me wonder if they're worried that the end is near for Tyler Lockett.
Yeah, and I can subscribe to that theory for sure. There's because of that redundancy, and that there are so many similarities between those two players. In fact, that was the comp, right? That was the guy that we kept hearing when people would talk about Eskridge leading up to the draft. It'd be like that was his player comparison in the NFL, Lockett. So him landing in Seattle certainly brings up those thoughts, or at least that idea that maybe Seattle knows what they have in Lockett, or maybe even more what they may not have in Lockett coming up soon, Matt.
Yeah, and I was gonna add that as well. Olive does not like Dwayne Eskridge. I just went back to my notes real quick because of the discrepancy. I'm going to go back and watch him some more. But just these are some notes that I wrote down real quick. Apparently, he didn't play receiver full time until 2020, which was his 5th season as a redshirt senior. I wrote down explosive and a versatile athlete, short but not small, beats press with quickness, but not sure about corners that can get physical and jam him up at the line, but he's physical at the catch point, and he can make contested catches out and away from his body. So, and he had a good Senior Bowl. So I don't know. I'm definitely going to go back and look more, because I didn't think there would be such a giant discrepancy between what we thought about him. But
yeah, the picture was painted with a landing spot for me. I can't get
the volume
on board
will be an
with
issue.
The
volume will be an issue.
Right. And I feel like he's a player that is going to need volume. But time will tell. We'll see who's right about this one. I like that McDowell sits right there on the fence in between us. So see how it plays out. If there's a UDFA to talk about with the Seahawks, it's another wide receiver. The big wide receiver out of Florida State, Tamorrion Terry. Another guy, Ryan, that had a little Devy buzz over the last few years, and there were things to like even in the pre-draft process about Terry. The fact that he went undrafted is a little bit concerning, obviously, and kind of surprising. Really, I thought he'd be a day 3 pick, but I thought he'd for sure get selected. So is there anything there with Terry that maybe could make him a stash for down the road?
Well, I mean, we've said all we need to say about the landing spot. Clearly, we are not excited about that in general for wide receivers. And it's just kind of like you said, it's just so hard for undrafted wide receivers to really make it in the league at all. So I'm not counting on Terry. He's a player in hindsight that should have come out in the draft a year ago. He had a little bit of buzz, ended up going back to Florida State, and ultimately left the team before the season even ended. And I don't believe that was not a COVID opt-out. That was just walking away, just quitting the team. I'm sure that didn't help his stock in the eyes of NFL scouts either. So I think it's just too far to go for Terry.
Yeah, trash for me. Straight line, speed kind of player, has some nice length, but I don't think it really offers that much outside of that. And why would you throw it to him, 60 yards downfield when you have DK Metcalf out there? So that's kind of my take on Terry.
So like he's a 2-route player, right? You either send him deep or run the slant. That's all you really do with Tamorrion Terry. And he is pretty good at both. He's all right, especially as a college player. He runs under the football well, and he has a big enough body to handle that slant. So maybe he's like the poorest man's version of DK Metcalf, as poor as you can get, right? Because DK is magnificent on the slant and so good deep down the field. At other levels, he's never really proven himself to be exceptional outside of those two places in their game plan. Let's jump over to the LA Rams, guys. Another team that made a splash in the second round with a wide receiver, but maybe not the name we expected. It's Tutu Atwell. We've talked about him quite a bit on this show, actually. The size is just not there with Tutu, Ryan, and he goes late in the second round to the Rams, who, as we all know, have wide receivers already in place. So buried on a depth chart, there's some chances to probably make an impact on special teams. He is that speed freak that can stretch the field. So maybe there's a role for him, but does it ever transfer over to Dynasty? And are we really willing to make a draft pick in the third round to add Tutu Atwell to our rosters?
Yeah, probably not. There's obvious concerns about his size and therefore his durability and just how long he can last in the league in general, taking hits from NFL defenders. We know that
Jamal Adams is going to make him look real bad going across the middle.
We know the Rams like to use Robert Woods in those end arounds. I think that could be the Atwell role. So
sure.
Take whatever Robert Woods got as a runner last year, and he scored a couple of touchdowns, I believe. That will be Atwell's ceiling, I think.
Yeah, I think he scored them at the 1 and 2 yard line when they ran those, and I don't know if I like Atwell running around the edge at the 1 or 2.
Yeah.
So I see what you say, though. That is a good point. There might be some creative ways to get him the football. I just don't know if it matters for fantasy, if it's going to be enough. That's all gimmicky, and we've seen these guys come through the league that have been relegated to these kind of roles. And unless you have something to add on top of that, where that makes that end around or that jet sweep added bonus, then you're not even on dynasty rosters. Matt?
It almost feels like the panic pick. Like they wanted Eskridge and they're like, oh crap, he's gone. Let's take Tutu Atwell. Right. So
sure.
I don't know. I don't know if that's actually what happened, but that's the way it felt. So yeah, I agree with you guys completely. Man, I don't know. I don't want to call him a trash. I'm going to call him borderline stash, I guess. Because of the draft capital, and also if we look back at some of his metrics, he was had a pretty good dominator rating, if I remember right. I'm trying to pull up my notes here real quick. He had a 40% dominator rating in an age 19 breakout age. So, he has the metrics behind him for some kind of success, but it seems like he's going to be a better NFL player than maybe if he's going to be a player, he's going to be a better NFL player than a fantasy player. Like you said, getting used in those creative, like kind of gadgety ways to get him the ball in his hands, but you're not going to be able to count on that, I don't think, for fantasy.
Well, I mean, I think a couple things. As good as the Rams have been over the past few years under Sean McVay, it's not because of their draft. Their drafting ability, especially on the offensive side. I mean, you just look at the players they brought in, and especially at wide receiver. And overall, we're talking about a lot of misses and very few hits. Really none outside of Cooper Kupp. So I don't think Atwell is the one to change that trend. And just looking at the names that they've drafted here, we've talked about maybe the versatility that Atwell brings. Jacob Harris, we'll talk about in a moment. Wide receiver / tight end. They announced him as the tight end or as a wide receiver for fantasy purposes. I know my fantasy league has already moved him to a tight end. They drafted Jake Funk, basically a big blocking fullback who can do some different things. So looking for that versatility really across all positions was definitely something that they had in mind with this draft.
Right. And they're, those kind of guys become good NFL football players, but certainly don't land on dynasty rosters. All these teams out of the Shanahan tree do this. You see a handful of names that are tight end / running back / fullback and those wide receivers that move around the formation and the running backs that can line up in the slot and all these kind of things. That's a Shanahan staple, really. And all these teams, the Rams, the Jets started doing that a little bit this year. The Packers have done it over the last few seasons as well since LaFleur has gotten there. You don't want to get married to that as a dynasty manager because I really believe that Atwell fits into this. They see a specific role for him maybe it's a package of less than 10 plays a game where he can make an impact. And a lot of those plays may be as that jet sweep guy that is a decoy to create running lanes for Cam Akers, and really be great for that offense, but not necessarily very good for dynasty managers. You mentioned some of the names, Ryan. Jacob Harris in the 4th round, Jake Funk in the 7th, and then Ben Skowronek out of Notre Dame, the wide receiver, in the 7th round. I'm guessing this is trash all the way around, but if you guys want to correct me on that, feel free.
I think Harris is maybe a stash. He's gotten some buzz lately, especially if he's going to be tight end instead of wide receiver. I do like the opportunity for Higbee this season now that Everett has moved on. But, Harris, I think, could spoil that. Maybe not this season, but in another year or two, perhaps he can make some noise that way. So I think he's a stash. And then the other guy, I already forgot his name, is trash. The other two guys, I guess, Ben Funk and Jake Funk. And,
a great name, no doubt, a great name, but it's probably not gonna land him on.
Could we get
rosters.
Jake Funk and Jake Butt on the same team, and then we have Butt Funk?
Well done, Matt. Hat tip on that one. Ryan, where did you land on Atwell? Did you land on trash, or are you stashing him?
Stash for Atwell and for Harris, Jacob Harris as well.
Oh, I'm trashing all 4 of these guys. I'm out. No Rams for me this year.
You're more of a Van Jefferson guy, huh?
Who you're hot tonight, Price. How about the Arizona Cardinals, guys? There is one name to talk about, and it's a fun one. It's Rondale Moore out of Purdue. He has all the highlights that you want out of college. He has the landing spot with an offense that we like. He has a quarterback in place. And, to be honest with you, he has all the draft capital we wanted, because there was a little bit of fear, right, with Moore that maybe because of the size and those things that he slips. Well, everything fell into place. He got it all. Matt, there's no way he's not cash, right?
My favorite player in this entire draft, perfect landing spot. He's cash all the way. And if the Packers screw up this Rodgers situation, then I might become a Cardinals fan just because Rondale Moore is there.
Whoa.
So
He is spitting fire tonight,
man.
Rondale Moore is going to be so much fun to watch.
I cannot wait.
And
I can't wait.
I can't wait either. I expect all the creativity and the funky route combinations and motions and all those things that we like in that Arizona offense. It's all going to be Rondale Moore, and it's going to be creating opportunities at the line of scrimmage and down the field. Because when you have Rondale Moore just burning you on those quick bubble screens, tunnel screens, end arounds, those kind of things, that sucks the defense up. And then suddenly your guy that everybody says, well, he's fast, but not like deep speed fast. He's getting over to the top for big plays. And those are all going to happen. They're going to happen as a rookie. If he might be the most cash player that we've covered in this 4-week series, Ryan.
100% cash. Love Rondale Moore. I'm with Matt completely. He's my favorite player in this draft as well. And I loved the player already. I was starting to get a little worried as the draft neared that maybe he wouldn't get that draft capital that I was hoping for. But as a mid-second rounder, that works for me. I think Dan won some money on that draft pick as well. 100% cash player. And I think, we've heard the Elijah Moore hype lately. And then of course Bateman is getting attention as a first round draft pick and maybe the potential wide receiver 1 on his team. 2 things that we can't say about Rondale Moore at this point. So I think you're getting a little bit of a discount on Rondale Moore right now in these later rookie drafts,
which seems insane. That seems nuts that there is that discount or even a perceived discount. He's attainable, and it doesn't feel like he should be at this point. We all love the landing spot. We love the draft capital. Although Ryan's right, Matt. I did win some money on that one. I was so right, so right when I said he's going to be closer to a 3rd-round pick than a 1st-round pick, and you said, no way. Obviously going to be closer to a 1st-round pick. 2.17, baby. 1 pick after halfway through.
The Packers they let us down with this one. That's all I'll say.
Okay.
Didn't you lose? You won a bet with Dickens, right? For one by one pick. I think is that what it was?
Was it with Dickens? I thought it was you.
Wasn't with me. It was not with me.
It was.
I would not have bet you on that.
When Eric listens, he'll be shaking his head. Let's jump over to San Francisco, fellas. There are a few names worth talking about for sure, and probably some names that dynasty managers everywhere are looking at high in their dynasty drafts, at least relatively speaking. It starts with the big name in Superflex leagues, Trey Lance, North Dakota State. Everybody knows that I love Trey Lance and think he is a future superstar. I've done the comparisons, the Mahomes type upside with Trey Lance in that offense with that coaching staff. It's going to happen. He is cash. It's just not immediate cash, right, Ryan?
I think it might be immediate cash.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and even in a one quarterback league, I think he's a cash player. I have a single quarterback best ball league that I've won a couple of years now. So I had the 112 pick, and I used that pick on Trey Lance and was pretty happy about it. So yeah, I do think he has a chance to start early and early and often for the 49ers. Just I think they know what they have in Garoppolo, and whether they ultimately move him or not, or if they just let him hang around, I think Lance will get his shot.
It really feels the vibe I get is that they want Garoppolo to start early in the season. That might just be a gut. Maybe I'm off with that. And they feel Lance could benefit from sitting, a handful of weeks or maybe even most of the season. That's what gives me a little bit of pause when it comes to if he's going to be a cash guy in 2021. Matt, where do you land on Trey Lance?
Yeah, he's cash in 2021, and I think it's possible. I know I've been on the hot takes tonight apparently, but I think it's possible that
it started with Dwayne Eskridge. I don't know what was going on there.
I think it's you're not if you don't like that one, you're probably going to hate this one. All of the stuff around Urban Meyer, it just feels weird. It feels gross the way they're using everything. He's called what's his face? Travis Etienne / now using him that way, brought in team tape, all this stuff. It just feels like what if he screws up Trevor Lawrence? What if he does? I mean, maybe not permanently forever, but like the first season, if he screws up Trevor Lawrence, then maybe Trey Lance is the best quarterback of this rookie class during their rookie season. So I don't think it's even that necessarily bad if you decided you wanted to take Trey Lance over Trevor Lawrence in a Superflex draft. So I
don't either. And I've said it before. I think there's a realistic chance that Lance is the best fantasy quarterback in the class. It's not even a real big leap to get there. So you guys are more, I guess, glass half full that Trey Lance will take over early. I think it's going to take that injury, which most likely is going to come with Jimmy Garoppolo, for him to get on the field in the first month or maybe even the first couple months of the season.
But even when he was healthy last year, he was bad. Like what if he comes out of the gate and has 2 bad games in a row? I don't know.
I guess, dynasty managers will be clamoring for Lance, but does that mean Shanahan and that coaching staff is going to make the switch? I'm just not convinced.
If they start 0-2 with Garoppolo,
maybe.
I know they have I guess I can't say I know, but I think I read somewhere that the Niners have one of the easiest, if not the easiest schedule in the entire league this year. So, I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe Garoppolo does come out and looks good because of the schedule. I don't know.
Yeah, they're getting the benefit of playing a lower class schedule because of how they finished last season. Trey Sermon, 3rd round pick to the 49ers, out of Ohio State. Matt, a quality running back, a guy we liked at least to some extent coming into the NFL draft. Then we saw the landing spot and the 3rd round draft capital, which is typically pretty good for a running back. Feels like Trey Sermon's going to get opportunities early and often in this San Francisco offense, which has churned out some really good fantasy running backs. So interested to see where you land here. It feels like he's a potential cash guy, though.
Yeah, I think he is cash, but I also feel like we're propping him up a little bit too much now. Brian, you might have updated rookie ADP, but I think he's going like 108, 109 at this point, and I understand why, but I just don't know how you're going to predict it unless you think that Shanahan is just going to completely change what he's going to do. I really think Mostert's going to get the first shot. And we'll see with Sermon at some point. I'm sure he'll be mixed in early, but I'm not convinced he's going to take over the role entirely. And, you know, running back is such a difficult position anyway, with 20 to 24 guys we really think we can count on at this point. So, you know, I think he will have his games, but I'm not sure we're going to know exactly when we should be starting him. I'm not convinced he's going to just completely take over the backfield, I guess is the way to put it.
I'm so frustrated with Trey Sermon because you're right. He is moving up all these draft boards. In those kitchen sink leagues, I have a couple shares of Trey Sermon out of Devy League. You know, it's a Devy League, and you know, invest in him early. And I can't get those kind of prices for Trey Sermon, trying to capitalize on it. So it feels like there's somebody in every league that loves Trey Sermon, except in the leagues I'm trying to sell him. So I'm kind of with you, Matt. I think he's cash. But I don't think it's straight cash, homie. It's not a guarantee, right?
No, not a guarantee. But I do think he's a cash player as well. And of course, the Jeff Wilson injury cemented that. If you were looking at that backfield and initially after the draft and just thinking he's the young guy, and Wilson and Mostert have both had injury issues. Maybe you were a little ahead of the curve there, but ultimately I think it probably worked for you if you were drafting him in that late first round range immediately after the NFL draft, because Matt, you're right. He has moved up. He's in that 1.7, 1.8 range of single quarterback leagues. He's in the 112, 2.01 range of super flex leagues. He's ahead of Rashad Bateman, ahead of Elijah Moore, Rondale Moore, Michael Carter. Carter, interestingly enough, was actually ahead of Sermon until the Wilson injury. I was kind of surprised by that one, honestly, as well. But the injury to Wilson, I think, is a huge deal for Sermon and ultimately makes him a cash player.
What's the upside with Trey Sermon? Ultimate upside in this great offense that, let's say they really hit the ground running, it's going well, Mostert is only a part-time player, or maybe he goes down and Sermon becomes the guy. What is his ultimate upside? Where could he end the season among running backs, Ryan?
I think he could easily be an RB1 in this offense. I mean, I think about a guy like James Conner, who – you know, you question his talent, and of course injuries played a big part in his career, unfortunately, but Conner put up 1,000+ yards. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but certainly was a running back who gained a ton of value over his first couple of seasons in the league. And then you had to make the decision, is he for real? Is he an elite running back we can count on for 2 or 3 or 4 years? Or should we be selling? And for most running backs, that's going to be the answer. And it's tough to sell high on some of those players. Tough in two different ways, right? You've got to find the manager in your league that does believe in them. And you also have to make the decision for yourself that you're ready to.
Yeah, I really like that comp, and Matt, I want to bring you in on this as well. The James Conner comp is a good one. He's a guy that there were lots of questions about, and then got the landing spot and became the stud, and we had to make that decision. So when it comes to Sermon with you, what's the upside, and what are you looking to do if you have him on your rosters?
I don't know if I would say he's easily a running back one, but I think he's definitely in that top 10 to 12 discussion. Were he to take over, we have to remember if all of our desires for Trey Lance come true, right? If he's going to be running the ball a lot as well. And we know that, at least historically, the data that we have is that running quarterbacks are going to target their running backs less because they're going to run it instead of dump it off to their running back, right? So you're going to reduce his PPR upside at that point. And, if Trey Lance runs for 5 to 10 touchdowns, then, you're reducing that part of his game as well. But if he is able to take over the backfield, I think there's almost no chance he's not like that back end running back one. And in terms of what I'm doing with him, if he did finish as a running back one, I'm probably going to sell him, I think. Yeah,
it feels like that he's one of those guys that you want to get what you can while the getting's good, and then move on from him. That's how I'm looking at it. I've tried to capitalize, as I said before, on some of that jump, that spike in value since the NFL draft, and I'm having a hard time doing it in my leagues. But that's not to say that's going to happen in yours. Last guy we need to talk about here, another running back, Elijah Mitchell out of Louisiana. 6th round pick, another 49ers tailback, Ryan. Late round stash guy that's hanging around that depth chart. And as we know, everybody in that San Francisco backfield at some point becomes the featured guy. Seems like Elijah Mitchell will be one of those guys down the road here.
It seems like that's how they play things. And because of that, I would call him a stash. Certainly at the gap in ADP. Trey Sermon's going to cost you basically a 1st round pick, and Elijah Mitchell's hanging around there at the end of the 3rd round or into the 4th round.
Yeah, I think he's a stash as well. We could, going into 2022, it could be Sermon as the lead guy and Mitchell as the change of pace or backup, or whatever you want to call the secondary backs, the tertiary backs in Shanahan's offense. Right, they're all going to get on the field at some point, unless Sermon is just so good he blows them out of the water, which I just not sure he is. So love taking a shot on Mitchell late. And I mean, I don't know if I would necessarily say I would rather spend the $1 or $2 that it would cost me to get Mitchell than the, I don't know, $50 to $100 depending on your auction budget that's going to cost to get Sermon, because Sermon's certainly going to get the first choice. But from a risk reward standpoint, I think Mitchell has some good upside on him.
Yeah, and that's what makes him a stash. He's so cheap that you can put him in that 29th or 30th roster spot and feel great about it. Heck, in a 22 or 24 or 25 man league, there's probably room for Elijah Mitchell on your roster. Guys, we did it. We covered every draft pick. We even threw on some of these UDFAs. We called them all cash, stash, or trash. Guess we get to do it next year.
We should have. We got to go back and start keeping tallies, like of how many out of all of the rookies did we call cash, stash, or trash. I'd just be curious to see the numbers on that. Well, hey, listeners, somebody that listened, go back and tally all that for us and let us know.
Yeah, let us know how we did. we all need that report card, right? So we got through the series. We covered all these rookies, fellas, and now we get to take a quick break and reset. And we'll be back at it again next week. For Ryan and Matt, I'm Dan. Thanks for listening to this episode of the DLF Dynasty Podcast. We'll catch you again next week.